topic that I saw you talk a lot about on your Instagram page. It's a topic that I never hear spoken about, but I know is happening for a lot of men, especially as they hit their 40s, especially after divorce, when they're dating new people, when they're becoming intimate with new people. Erectile dysfunction, ED, things not working the way you thought it was. It really, your videos were excellent about it. Talk a little bit about this topic that a lot of people are not talking about.
Yeah, and I think it's, as you saw, it was probably just as many women are curious about it as guys are. I just think when I'm sitting with my buddies now, it comes up. There's so many double entendres here, but um, we are talking about our diminishing testosterone, our diminishing libido. There's this really cool part of it because we're getting more focused. We're less distracted. We're less distracted by every woman that walks by. We're less distracted by paths that aren't ours. So career paths, purpose paths. We're not as hungry for the affirmation, so that we're actually staying on course. But at the same time, there's moments in which our body seems to fail us, and it's conspiring. It feels like it's conspiring against us. And I think where I'm encouraging now is that this isn't conspiring against you. Actually, your penis will give you a lot of information about how healthy emotionally you are. That if you're aligned emotionally, this thing will most likely work. It won't work like it did in the past where you didn't have to be emotionally aligned. It just worked of its own volition. Now, if you aren't dealing with your shit, it might say, you got to deal with your shit, bro. And that's a beautiful thing. And I think just men aren't oriented that way to think that way. It seems more like I'm breaking down. And I think in a lot of moments when it's non-medical, there is this actual, hey, I actually want to support you right now. But if you're not going to work on your emotional stuff, then I'm not going to be able to perform well for you. So, and I didn't even share that on the Instagram. It's coming to me. This is why conversation's so great, right? It's the one thing I hate about Instagram is that I'm talking to myself on a camera, and sometimes I'm totally off. When we're actually sharing, there's things that start becoming more aware, and this is what men are often not doing. They're not having this conversation with their buddies. So in my own life, and obviously sharing it to the public, I was sharing about my own problems with my friend down there, that as we share this more, it just becomes this conversation that gets closer and closer to who we are and less about it. And then it might actually do more of what you want it to do. But you have to have some realistic expectations of how it works with you. So usually I think it's conspiring for you, not against you. But our natural inclination is to get pissed off.
I think this is what's very important, is normalizing that this is happening to pretty much everybody. And what's interesting is, it's funny, this podcast has been sponsored by a Blue Chew in the past. So we acknowledge that this is something that's going on, that getting assistance is not something to be embarrassed about. And what's interesting is dating, talking to women, kind of saying, oh, this is kind of funny, look who our sponsor is. They are just like all ears, because I cannot tell you how many times they say, oh, this happens all the time with this new guy I'm dating, or he's drinking, and I just wish he would open up about it or take a supplement if that's what he needs, instead of like, now it's on me, he's not attracted to me. So like opening up this conversation that it's happening to every man, and women are experiencing it too. So any tips on even like how a conversation like that would go when it's kind of that awkward moment?
Normalize it. If it stops working in a moment, it's not going to do what you want it to do all the time. So in my own life, it's a pause. It's like, hey, let's take a break. I'll probably be ready back in a little while, but it's not doing its thing right now. Or man, I might need to wait for tomorrow. Can I take care of you? What can I do for you? And I think that the normalization of it takes the pressure off a bit. And then the normalization of the conversation, not just the normalization of that this happens, but the normalization of the conversation that why would you not talk about this huge part of your life, sex, in all of the various ways that you need to talk about it, not just that I want it or I hope that this goes well, but that this isn't going well sometimes, or part of it is because I'm worried that you're not into it. Can we talk about that? And all these things that are just not being addressed, we frankly just need to get better
these
at
are conversations
hard
that you're probably
conversations.
not having in your marriage, where you probably weren't having much sex. So now, and again, you want to talk about rejection. You're now being thrown into this potential rejection, potential mismatch sexually. It's like it is an opportunity, but it can also bring on shame and awkwardness and rejection, and the woman feels it too. So yeah, it is like, think of it as like kind of like, this is a little bit funny. Let's talk about it. Let's see how they react to it. That's a great place to see. I've heard a lot of women say, like, if a guy can talk about this stuff, even if they're rejecting me, if they can be open and honest, I can trust him more. It's a very rare thing that, we think we shouldn't be talking about this. They want us to be talking about it. So again, like you said, normalizing the conversation is a big piece.
Yeah, I'll say this, Rob, like this is when I think about the occupational hazard of being a therapist, that since I was 25, I started at 25 in my career, that I've been talking about this stuff with people since then. I can't tell you how many conversations, clients I've worked with over the years that just aren't having sex. They're so misaligned sexually. And it's not just that the woman doesn't want it. Like there's guys that are in that same spot. And so it is a thing I'm pretty aware of when I'm dating, of how do we align sexually? Because it is one of the primary reasons there's a breakdown in relationship. And so if I can encourage anything, especially to your divorced crew, that when you get back in the game, that is something you really prioritize talking about. Where are we? And really find out if they mean what they say. Because we've all been in this situation, or we've heard the stories where they said that they were this and that, and then I got into the marriage and then it wasn't the case. But, if you've got a second try or a third try at this, that you really prioritize conversations about sex and knowing where you're each at, your desire levels, and make sure that's aligned, because it can be the breakdown of a second and third relationship. And it's one of these topics we tend to avoid, or we think what we're getting in the moment is what it's always going to be.
Honeymoon phase will not last. It won't be the same spark. It won't be the same spark that it was, which is why conversations like this are so important, because you don't want to just like, we were on the rocket ship, it was amazing, now we're plateaued, now we don't have sex, and now we're like going down again, another pun, like constantly. But yeah, I mean, you need to have these conversations. You need to try different things. You might need some help that you didn't need before in the beginning of the relationship, or in your 20s when everything worked perfectly. So yeah, it's such an interesting, like another new chapter of rejection, discomfort conversations that we're all being thrown into. So you might as well ride the wave. Good times. Drew, this is fantastic.
Fun
This
times.
is so helpful for people to hear. Nobody's talking about this stuff. I appreciate that you're putting it out there. Tell people where they can find you.
So Instagram is way too long of a name, but I made the mistake on YouTube of putting that up there in all my videos. So now I can't take it down because that's how people find me, but it's Drew Newkirk Psychotherapy. And then my YouTube is just Drew Newkirk, and there's 50 hours of content on there.
Anybody go check
so
out.
That's more
in
my
1
long
minute,
form
you can
stuff.
find him on Instagram, and like he will say the things that you are thinking about but haven't been able to put words to. So Drew, I appreciate you being on the podcast.
Thanks, Rob. Always appreciate you, man.